Amputated dog drags herself through snow to show rescuers something shocking. The snow was falling in thick, heavy flakes that turned the world into a blur of white and gray, each breath visible in the frozen air, like a ghost escaping from lungs that burned with cold. She appeared at the edge of the forest like an apparition, a German shepherd dragging herself through snow that came up to her chest, her back legs useless, trailing behind her like broken wings. But it wasn't the sight of her ruined body that stopped my heart. It was her eyes. They were wild with urgency, blazing with a desperation so fierce it cut through the winter cold like a blade. She wasn't seeking help for herself. Every agonizing movement forward, every moment she spent dragging her paralyzed hindquarters through that merciless snow, it was all driving towards something else. Something that mattered more to her than her own survival. I was part of a volunteer search and rescue team, out looking for a missing hiker in the mountains of Colorado. We had been searching for hours, the cold seeping through every layer of clothing, turning our fingers numb and our hope thin. When the dog appeared, my partner Jake reached for his radio to call animal control, but I stopped him. Because I recognized what I was seeing in her eyes. I had seen it before, in the eyes of mothers pulling their children from burning buildings, in the eyes of soldiers carrying wounded comrades across battlefields. This wasn't the look of an animal seeking rescue. This was the look of someone on a mission, someone who would die before giving up. She came straight to me, her front legs powerful and determined, her back legs leaving two parallel tracks in the snow like the wake of a sinking ship. When she reached me, she didn't stop to rest, didn't pause to acknowledge her own pain. She grabbed my jacket sleeve in her teeth, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to communicate, and she pulled. Then she released me, turned, and began dragging herself back the way she had come, back into the forest, back into the storm that was growing worse with each passing minute. She looked back at me once, and in that look was a command, a plea, a prayer. Follow me. You know that moment when every instinct in your body is screaming different things? When logic says one thing and your heart says another? When you're standing at a crossroads and you know that whatever choice you make will echo through the rest of your life? That's where I was. Jake was saying we needed to stick to the search grid, that we couldn't afford to get distracted, that the dog probably just wanted food or shelter. But I was already moving, already following her into the trees, because something in her desperation spoke to something fundamental in me, something that understood that this mattered, that this was why we were really out here in the storm. She moved faster than should have been possible for a dog with paralyzed back legs. She pulled herself forward with a strength born of pure determination. Her front paws digging into the snow, her body twisting and dragging, leaving a trail of blood in the white expanse behind her. The blood was bright red against the snow, each drop a small sacrifice, a price she was willing to pay. I followed that crimson trail deeper into the forest, Jake behind me now. Both of us silent except for our labored breathing. Both of us beginning to understand that we were witnessing something extraordinary. The forest grew denser, the snow deeper, the cold more vicious. My face felt like it was being flayed by frozen razors. My lungs ached with each breath. But the dog never slowed, never hesitated. She had a destination, and nothing, not her broken body, not the storm, not the pain that must have been screaming through every nerve, nothing was going to stop her from reaching it. I thought about what could drive a creature to such extremes. What kind of love or loyalty or desperate need could override every survival instinct, every signal from a body that was shutting down? We had been following her for maybe 20 minutes, though time had become strange and elastic in the storm, when she stopped at the base of a massive pine tree. The branches hung low, heavy with snow, creating a kind of shelter underneath. She looked back at me one more time, and then she crawled under those branches and disappeared. I dropped to my knees, pushed aside the snow-laden branches, and looked into the darkness beneath. There were 3 of them, 3 puppies so small they could fit in my hands. Huddled together in a shallow den the mother had somehow dug into the frozen earth. They were barely moving, their tiny bodies cold to the touch, their breathing so shallow it was almost imperceptible. But they were alive, against all odds. In temperatures that should have killed them hours ago, they were alive because their mother had somehow kept them warm, had somehow protected them until she could find help. The mother dog collapsed beside her puppies with a sound that was part whimper, part sigh, a sound that spoke of relief so profound it transcended species, transcended language. She had done it. She had dragged her broken body through a blizzard, had left a trail of her own blood in the snow, had used the last reserves of her strength to lead strangers to her babies. And now, with her mission complete, her body simply gave up. She lay there in the snow, her breathing becoming more labored, her eyes beginning to glaze, and I realized with a horror that gripped my throat like hands that she was dying. She had held on just long enough to save them. Jake was already on the radio, calling for emergency extraction, his voice tight with emotion. I was pulling off my jacket, wrapping the puppies in the warmth of my own body heat, feeling their tiny hearts beating against my chest like desperate prayers. But the mother, God, the mother was fading fast. Her eyes found mine one last time, and in them I saw not fear, not pain, but something that looked almost like peace. She had done what she needed to do. She had saved them. I'm not a religious person, never have been. But in that moment, I found myself praying to whatever forces govern this universe, begging them not to take her. Not after everything she had endured. Not when she had fought so hard. I pressed my hands against her chest, felt her heart stuttering beneath my palms, felt the cold that had seeped so deep into her body. It seemed to be pulling her down into the earth itself. Jake wrapped his own jacket around her, and together we tried to will warmth back into her dying body, tried to give her back some fraction of the life force she had spent saving her children. The helicopter arrived faster than I thought possible, the sound of its rotors cutting through the storm like the voice of salvation. The paramedics, trained for human emergencies but moved by what they were seeing, worked on the mother dog with the same intensity they would have given a person. IV lines, heated blankets, oxygen, everything they had. The puppies were placed in a thermal container, their tiny bodies slowly warming, their breathing becoming stronger, and the mother, wrapped in layers of emergency blankets, was loaded onto the helicopter alongside her babies. I rode with them, couldn't let them go alone, couldn't abandon this family that had already been through so much. The pilot flew through conditions that should have grounded us, driven by the same urgency that had driven the mother dog through the snow. And during that flight, as the helicopter bucked and swayed in the storm, I held the mother's head in my lap, and I talked to her. I told her she was the bravest soul I had ever met. I told her that her babies were safe, that they were going to live because of her. I told her she had to hold on, had to fight just a little bit longer, because her story wasn't finished yet. The veterinary hospital in Denver was ready for us, alerted by Jake, who had stayed behind to continue the search for the missing hiker. Dr. Marcus Webb, a trauma specialist who usually worked with police and military dogs, took one look at the mother and his jaw tightened. He told me later that he had given her less than a 10% chance of survival. She was hypothermic, severely malnourished, her back legs paralyzed from what appeared to be a spinal injury, probably from being hit by a car weeks or even months ago. She had been dragging herself through the wilderness, hunting for food, protecting her puppies, surviving on nothing but will and maternal love. The fact that she had made it as far as she did, that she had kept those puppies alive in sub-zero temperatures, It defied every medical and biological principle he knew. But Dr. Webb hadn't counted on her will to live. As his team worked on her through that first critical night, as they fought to bring her body temperature back to normal, to stabilize her vital signs, to repair the damage that cold and starvation and injury had inflicted, she fought alongside them. Every time her heart rate dropped, every time she seemed to be slipping away, something would pull her back. And that something, Dr. Webb believed, was the sound of her puppies in the next room, their small cries reaching her even through the walls, reminding her that they still needed her. The puppies recovered quickly, their young bodies resilient in ways that adult bodies are not. Within days, they were nursing, playing, filling the hospital with the sounds of new life. They named them Sierra, Summit, and Storm, 3 perfect puppies who had no idea how close they had come to dying, how much their mother had sacrificed to keep them alive. But their mother, the dog the staff began calling Valor, because no other name seemed adequate, her recovery was measured in tiny, painful increments. She would never walk on 4 legs again. The damage to her spine was permanent, irreversible. But Dr. Webb fitted her with a custom wheelchair, a contraption that supported her back legs and allowed her front legs to do the work of movement. The first time she realized she could move again, without dragging herself, without leaving trails of blood. The look in her eyes was something I will carry with me until the day I die. It was joy, pure and uncomplicated, the joy of a soul that had been trapped and was suddenly free. But the most remarkable moment came when they brought her puppies to her for the first time since the rescue. She had been separated from them during the critical first days of treatment, able to hear them but not see them, not touch them. When the staff placed those 3 small bodies beside her, when she could finally smell them, lick them, confirm with her own senses that they had survived, she made a sound I had never heard from a dog before. It was something between a cry and a song, a sound of such profound relief and love that every person in that room found themselves wiping away tears. The story of Valor and her puppies spread through social media like wildfire. People from around the world sent donations to cover her medical bills, sent toys and blankets for the puppies, sent messages of support and love. A film crew came to document her recovery. News stations ran segments about the dog who had dragged herself through a blizzard to save her babies. But for me, sitting beside her hospital bed day after day, watching her learn to navigate the world in her wheelchair, watching her nurse her puppies and play with them, despite her disability, the real story was quieter, more intimate. It was in the way she would rest her head on my knee when the pain got bad, trusting me to understand, to help. It was in the way she watched her puppies, with eyes that held entire universes of love, eyes that had looked into the face of death and chosen to fight. It was in the small victories, the first time she managed to move her wheelchair without assistance, the first time she played tug-of-war with one of her puppies, the first time she ran, actually ran, her front legs powerful and her wheelchair spinning behind her, her mouth open in what could only be described as a smile. Sierra, Summit, and Storm were adopted by families who understood they were taking home pieces of a miracle, who promised to honor their mother's sacrifice by giving them lives filled with love and safety. But Valor, she came home with me, because somewhere during those weeks in the hospital, somewhere between the moment she had grabbed my jacket in the snow and the moment she had learned to run again, she had become mine and I had become hers. We had saved each other in ways that went beyond the physical rescue, in ways that spoke to the deepest parts of what it means to be alive, to love, to fight for what matters most. She lives with me now in a house at the edge of the same forest where I found her. A house with ramps instead of stairs, with wide doorways for her wheelchair, with a yard where she can run and play and feel the sun on her face. Every morning we walk together, me on 2 legs and her on 4 wheels. And sometimes I look at her and I'm overwhelmed by the mathematics of her courage. She had every reason to give up, to accept death as the easier path, but she chose the harder road, chose to drag her broken body through hell because her love for her puppies was stronger than her pain, stronger than her fear, stronger than death itself. And here's what keeps me awake some nights, what fills me with a kind of awe that borders on religious experience. We never found the missing hiker we were searching for that day. He had already made it down the mountain, had found shelter in a ranger station hours before we even started looking. If Valor hadn't appeared when she did, if she hadn't dragged herself through that blizzard to find help, if I hadn't followed her into the forest, those puppies would have died. She would have died. The entire trajectory of multiple lives would have been different. Some people call it coincidence, call it luck, call it chance. But I've learned from Valor that there are forces in this universe more powerful than we understand. That love can bend the rules of probability. That a mother's determination can move mountains, or at least move a broken body through snow deep enough to drown in. She taught me that our limitations, our disabilities, our broken pieces, they don't define what we're capable of. They're just obstacles to overcome on the way to saving what we love. If you've ever known a love that fierce, if you've ever pushed past your own limits to protect someone who couldn't protect themselves, if you've ever looked into the eyes of an animal and seen a soul as complex and beautiful as any human's, leave a comment below. Share your story of courage, of the moment when you realized that love asks everything of us and somehow makes us capable of giving it. Tell me about the animals who have taught you what really matters, who have shown you that heroism doesn't require a cape or a medal, just a heart willing to sacrifice everything for those who depend on us. Valor is sleeping beside me now, her wheelchair parked beside the couch, her breathing deep and peaceful. Sometimes she dreams, her front legs moving in sleep, chasing rabbits, or maybe just running free, the way she did before her injury, before her sacrifice, before she became the embodiment of everything brave and beautiful in this world. And I sit here, forever changed by a dog who dragged herself through snow to show me something shocking, something that has reshaped how I understand love, courage, and the extraordinary capacity for heroism that lives in the most unexpected souls. She saved her puppies that day in the snow. But in all the ways that truly matter, she saved me too.